Hello everyone. In this video, we'll be discussing about all the female symptoms of Allen's keynotes. The first drug is aceticum acidum. In this, the female has sore belching and vomiting of pregnancy. Also, there is burning water brash and profuse salivation day and night like lactic acid. Salivation aggravation only at night is Merck salt. Aconitum napellus female. There is amenorrhea in plethoric young girls. Amenorrhea after fright to prevent suppression of menses. Next is actia racemosa. Menses is irregular and exhausting like alumina and cocculus. Menses delayed or suppressed by mental emotion from cold or from fever. Menses with chorea, hysteria or mania. Increase of mental symptoms during menses. Severe left-sided inframammary pains like ustilago. Sharp, lancinating, electric-like pains in various parts, sympathetic with ovarian or uterine irritation. Pains in uterine region dart from side to side. In pregnancy, there is nausea, sleeplessness, false labor-like pains, sharp pains across abdomen. Abortion at third month, like Sabina and Sickle. You can remember this with a mnemonic SSC. The first S is for Sabina, second is for Sickle, and C is for semicifuga. During labor, the semicifuga female shivers in first stage, convulsions from nervous excitement, rigid OS, pains severe, spasmodic, tedious, aggravation by least noise, after pains which are worse in the groins. When given during last month of pregnancy, shortens labor if symptoms correspond like colophyllum and pulsatilla. Also, there is rheumatic dysmenorrhea. Next is aeschylus. In this, there is prolapse of uterus with acrid dark leukorrhea, with lumbosacral backache and great fatigue from walking. Next is agaricus. In this, there is prolapse of uterus, usually post-climacteric, bearing down pain almost intolerable. In this, compared with lilium tick, murex and sepia, agnus castus. In this, the leukorrhea is transparent but staining linen yellow, passes imperceptibly from the very relaxed parts. Deficient secretion or suppression of milk in nursing women like Asafoetida, lac caninum and lac defloratum, often with great sadness, says she'll die. Allium cepa. In this there is phlebitis, mostly purpural after forceps delivery. Alumina female, the leukorrhea is acrid and profuse, running down to the heels like syphilinum, worse during the daytime and ameliorated by cold bathing. After menses, the alumina female is exhausted physically and mentally, scarcely able to speak like Carbo animalis and Cocculus. Next is ambrogresia. In this, there is discharge of blood between periods at every little accident, after a long walk, after every hard stool, etc. Leukorrhea is thick bluish white mucus, especially or only at night. In this, compare with causticum, Merck salt and nitric acid. Next is ammonium carbonicum female. Cholera-like symptoms at the commencement of menstruation like bovista and veratrum. Menses too early, profuse, preceded by gripping colic. Acrid, makes the thighs sore, copious at night and when sitting like zinc, with toothache, with colic, sadness, fatigue especially of thighs, yawning and chilliness. Leukorrhea is watery, burning from the uterus, acrid, profuse from the vagina, and excoriation of vulva. Ammonium muriaticum. Leukorrhea like white of egg, preceded by gripping pain about the navel, brown, slimy, painless after every urination. During menses, there is diarrhea and vomiting, bloody discharge from the bowels like phosphorus, neuralgic pains in the feet, flow more profuse at night like bovista. Flow more profuse on lying down is creosote. Epocinum. In this, there is amenorrhea in young girls with bloating or dropsical extension of abdomen and extremities. Metrorrhagia, continued or paroxysmal flow, fluid or clotted, nausea, vomiting and palpitation, pulse is quick, feeble when moved, vital depression, fainting when raising head from pillow. Argentum metallicum female. In this, there is prolapse of uterus with pain in left ovary and back, extending forward and downward, Pain in right ovaries palladium with climacteric hemorrhage. Argentum nitricum, sensation of a splinter in or about uterus when walking or riding. Coition painful in both sexes, followed by bleeding from vagina. Like nitric acid. Metrorrhagia in young widows in sterility with nervous erethism at change of life like lachesis. Arnica montana. Their soreness of parts after labor prevents postpartum hemorrhage and puerperal complications, retention or incontinence of urine after labor like opium. Asterias, cancer of mammary, acute lancinating pain, drawing pain in breast, swollen, distended as before the menses, breast feels drawn in. A livid red spot appeared, broke and discharged, gradually invaded entire breast. Very fetid odor, edges pale, elevated, mammillary, hard, averted, bottom covered with reddish granulations. Sexual desire increased in women like lilium tig. Aurum metallicum. The uterus is prolapsed and indurated. From overreaching or straining, compare podophyllum and rustox. From hypertrophy like conium, menstrual and uterine affections with great melancholy, aggravation at menstrual period. Belladonna, pressing downwards as if the contents of abdomen would issue from the vulva, amelioration standing and sitting erect, and aggravation in mornings. Compare lilium tig, murex, and sepia. Borax. In this, the leucorrhea is profuse, albuminous, starchy, with sensation as if warm water were flowing down. For 2 weeks between the catamenia, compare bovista and conium. Coming to bovista, in this, menses flow only at night, not in the daytime. Like mac carp, only during day, ceases lying is cactus, causticum, and lilium tig. Diarrhea before and during menses, like ammonium carb. Occasional show every few days between periods, like borax. Every 2 weeks, dark and clotted, with painful bearing down like sepia. Bromium female. Physometra, loud emission of flatus from the vagina, like Lycopodium nux moscata. Membranous dysmenorrhea like laccan. Brownia alba. In this, the mammae is heavy, of a stony hardness, pale but hard, hot and painful, must support the breast like phytolacca. Vicarious menstruation, nose bleed when menses should appear like phosphorus, blood spitting or hemoptysis. Cactus grandiflorus. In this, the menstrual flow ceases when lying down. Compare bovista. In bovista, the flow is only at night like mac carp, causticum and lilium tig. Flow ceases on lying like cactus. Coming to the next, caladium. In this, the female has pruritus vaginae, which induces onanism like origanum and zinc during pregnancy with mucus discharge. Calcarea carp. Menstruation too early, too profuse, too long lasting, with subsequent amenorrhea and chlorosis with menses scanty or suppressed. Feet habitually cold and damp as if they had on cold, damp stockings, continually cold in bed. The least mental excitement causes profuse return of menstrual flow, like sulfur and tuberculinum. Carbo animalis female. After appearance of menses, so weak she can hardly speak, like alumina and cocculus. Menses flow only in morning. Menstruation, leucorrhea, diarrhea are all exhausting, like arsenic. All are offensive in sorinum. Carbolic acid, leucorrhea is acrid, copious, fetid and green. Colophyllum, in this the pains are intermittent, paroxysmal, spasmodic. Leucorrhea is acrid and exhausting. Upper eyelids heavy, has to raise them with the fingers like gelsemium. With moth spots on forehead like sepia. Leucorrhea in little girls like calcarea. Leucorrhea preventing pregnancy. Habitual abortion from uterine debility like elytris. from anemia with profound melancholy is helonias. Spasmodic rigid OS delays labor, needle like pricking pains in cervix. Labor pains short, irregular, spasmodic, tormenting, useless pains in beginning of labor like semicifuga, no progress made. Will correct deranged vitality and produce efficient pains if symptoms agree. Hemorrhage after hasty labor, want of tonicity, passive after abortion like sickle and thalassaepy. After pains, after long exhausting labor, spasmodic across lower abdomen, extend into groins. Extend in the shins is carbo wedge and cocculus. Lochia protracted, great atony, passive oozing for days from relaxed vessels like sickle. Coming to the next drug, causticum. In this, the menses is too early, too feeble, only during the day and cease on lying down. Chamomilla. Labor pains are spasmodic, distressing, wants to get away from them, tearing down the legs, press upward. Nipples inflamed, tender to touch like helonias and phytolacca. Infant's breast tender to touch. Milk runs out in nursing woman. Runs out after weaning is conium. Cicuta virosa female. Purpural convulsions. Frequent suspension of breathing for a few moments as if dead. Upper part of the body is most affected and the convulsions continue after delivery. Syncona. After climacteric with profuse hemorrhages. Acute diseases often result in dropsy. Cocculus. During the effort to menstruate, she is so weak she is scarcely able to stand from weakness of lower limbs like alumina and carbo animalis. After each period, hemorrhoids, leukorrhea in place of menses or between periods like iodum and xanthoxylum. Leukorrhea like the washings of meat like serum, ichorus and bloody. Leukorrhea during pregnancy. Cholinsonia. There is congestion of pelvic viscera with hemorrhoids, especially in later months of pregnancy. Pruritus in pregnancy with hemorrhoids, unable to lie down. Pelvic congestion resulting in dysmenorrhea. Colos in female, menses suppressed by chagrin, colic pains. Conium, bad effects of suppressed sexual desire or suppressed menses, bad effects of non-gratification of sexual instinct or from excessive indulgence. Breast sore, hard and painful before and during menstruation like lac caninum and calicarb. Menses feeble, suppressed, too late, scanty, of short duration, with rash of small red pimples over body, which ceases with the flow like dulcamara. Stopped by taking cold, by putting hands in cold water like lac defloratum. Leukorrhea 10 days after menses like borax and bovista. Leukorrhea is acrid, bloody, milky, profuse, thick, intermits. Crocus sativus, dysmenorrhea, flow black, stringy, clotted like ustilago. Crotalus, vicarious menstruation in debilitated constitutions. Compare digitalis and phosphorus. Menopause, intense and drenching perspirations, faintness and sinking at stomach. Prolonged metrorrhagia, dark fluid offensive with profound anemia. Malignant diseases of uterus, great tendency to hemorrhage, blood dark, fluid and offensive. Croton tiglium female, drawing pain through the chest from breast to scapula of same side every time the child nurses. Nipple is very sore. Cuprum metallicum, after pains which are very severe, distressing in calves and soles. Cyclamen. The female is pale, chlorotic with deranged menses like ferrum and pulsatilla. Menses accompanied by vertigo, headache and dim vision. Menses too early, too profuse. Too late, pale, scanty is in pulsatilla. Black and clotted and membranous. Better during flow. Worse during flow is semicifuga and pulsatilla. Euphrasia, amenorrhea with catarrhal symptoms of eyes and nose with profuse acrid lacrimation. Menses painful, regular, now lasting only 1 hour, or late, scanty, short, lasting only 1 day like Baraita carb. Ferrum metallicum, Menses too early, too profuse, too long lasting, with fiery red face, ringing in the ears, intermit 2 or 3 days and then return, flow pale, watery, and debilitating. Proninum. There is intense congestion of brain from delayed or suppressed menses, headache in place of menses, headache occurring after profuse uterine hemorrhage, rush of blood to head in pregnant women, flushes of heat at the climacteric like amyl nitrosum, belladonna, and lachesis, with the catamania like ferrum and sanguinaria. Coming to the next, graphitis female. Menses too scanty, pale, late with violent colic, irregular, delayed from getting feet wet like pulsatilla. Morning sickness during menstruation, very weak and prostrated like elumen, carbo animalis, and cocculus. Leukorrhea is acrid, excoriating, occurs in gushes day and night, before and after menses. Leukorrhea aggravation before menses is sepia, and aggravation after menses is creosote. Hard cicatrices remaining after mammary abscess, retarding the flow of milk. Cancer of breast from old scars and repeated abscesses. Hamamelis. Menses flow dark and profuse with soreness in abdomen. Menses after a blow on ovary or a fall. All suffering aggravates at menstrual period like semicifuga and pulsatilla. Uterine hemorrhage active or passive from jolting while riding over rough roads, bearing down pain in back. Helonias, menses too early, too profuse from uterine atony in women enfeebled by loss of blood, when patients lose more blood than is made in intermenstrual period. Breast swollen, nipples painful and tender, like conium and lac caninum. Flow passive, dark, clotted, and offensive. Sensation of soreness and heaviness in pelvis like lappa. A consciousness of the womb feels it move when she moves. It is so sore and tender like lycinum for the bad effects of abortions and miscarriages. Hydrastis. Leukorrhea is ropey, thick, viscid, and yellow, hanging from the OS in long strings like calibite with pruritus. Cancer breast, hard, adherent, skin mottled, puckered, pains knife like, sharp cutting, nipple retracted. Iodum, leukorrhea is acrid, corrosive, staining and corroding the linen, most abundant at times of menses. Cancerous degeneration of cervix, cutting pains in abdomen and hemorrhage at every stool. Ipecacuanha, hemorrhage active or passive, bright red from the uterus, profuse clotted, heavy, oppressed breathing during hemorrhage, stitches from navel to uterus. Calibicromicum, this prolapse of uterus, seemingly in hot weather. Callium brome, nervous cough during pregnancy, cough dry, hard, almost incessant, threatening abortion like conium. Calicard, feels badly week before menstruation, backache before and during menses, labor pains insufficient, violent backache, wants the back pressed like causticum. Creosote, postclimacteric diseases of women like lachesis, menses too early, profuse, protracted, pain during menses but aggravation after it, flow on lying down, cease on sitting or walking about. Cold drinks relieve menstrual pains. Flow intermits at times almost ceasing, then commencing again like sulfur. Leukorrhea is acrid, corrosive, offensive, worse between periods like bovista and borax. Has the odor of green corn, stiffens like starch, stains the linen yellow. Lochia is dark, brown, lumpy, offensive, acrid, almost ceases, then freshens up again, like conium and sulfur. Violent corrosive itching of pudenda and vagina. Next is lac caninum. Sexual organs easily excited from tough pressure on sitting or friction by walking, like cinnamonum, coffea, murex, and platina. Menses too early, too profuse, flow in gushes, Bright red viscid and stringy. Dark black stringy is crocus. Breast swollen, painful, sensitive before and during like conium. Physometra, discharge of flatters from vagina like bromium, lycopodium, nux moscata and sanguinaria. Breast inflamed, painful, aggravation by least jar and towards evening. Must hold them firmly when going up or down stairs like bryonia. Serviceable in almost all cases when it is required to dry up milk like asafoetida. To bring back or increase milk is lac defloratum. Loss of milk while nursing without any known cause like asafoetida. Lac defloratum, menses delayed, suppressed by putting hands in cold water like conium. Drinking a glass of milk will promptly suppress flow until next period. Compare phosphorus. Lachesis, menses at regular time, too short, scanty, feeble, pains all relieved by the flow, always better during menses like zinc. Lilium tigrinum female, headaches and mental ailments depending on uterine irritation or displacements, menstrual irregularities and irritable heart, bearing down sensation in abdomen and pelvis as though all organs would escape like lac caninum, murex and sepia, aggravation supporting vulva with hand and bearing down sensation with palpitation. Menses early, scanty, dark, offensive, flow only when moving about, cease to flow when she ceases to walk like causticum. On lying down is creosote and mac carb. Weak and atonic conditions of ovaries, uterus, and pelvic tissues resulting in anteversion, retroversion, subinvolution like helonias and sepia. Slow recovery after labor, nearly always with constipation from inactivity. Lycopodium, there is dryness of vagina, burning in, during, and after coition, like lycinum. Physometra, like bromium, lac caninum, nux moscata, and sanguinaria. Fetus appears to be turning somersaults. Lycinum female, there is prolapse of uterus, many cases of ears standing cured, sensitiveness of vagina rendering coition painful. Mac carb, menses preceded by sore throat like lac caninum, labor like pain, cutting colic, backache, weakness, and chilliness, flows only at night or when lying, seizes when walking like ammonium mure and creosote, reverse of lilium tig, menses acrid, dark, pitch like, difficult to wash off like medorinum. Next is magnesium muriaticum, menses with great excitement at every period, flow black and clotted, spasms and pains, aggravation in back when walking extends into thighs. Metrorrhagia aggravation at night in bed causing hysteria like semicifuga and colophyllum. Leukorrhea after exercise with every stool with uterine spasm followed by metrorrhagia 2 weeks after menses for 3 or 4 days like Baraita carb, bovista and conium. Magnesium phosphoricum, menses is early, flow dark, stringy, pains aggravates before and ameliorates when flow begins, like lachesis and zinc. Pains darting like lightning, shooting, aggravation right side, amelioration by heat and bending double. Vaginismus. Medorinum female, for women with chronic ovaritis, salpingitis, pelvic cellulitis, fibroids, cysts and other morbid growths of the uterus and ovaries, especially if symptoms point to malignancy with or without psychotic origin. Menses profuse, very dark, clotted, stains difficult to wash out like mac carb. Metrorrhagia climacteric, profuse for weeks, flow dark, clotted, offensive, in gushes on moving with malignant disease of uterus. Intense menstrual colic with drawing up of knees and terrible bearing down labor like pains must press feet against support as in labor. Intense pruritus of labia and vagina, aggravation by thinking of it. Breast and nipples sore and sensitive to touch. Breast cold as ice to touch, especially the nipples. Rest of body warm during menses. Mercurius, leukorrhea, acrid burning, itching with rawness, always worse at night. Pruritus, aggravation from contact of urine, which must be washed off, like sulfur. Morning sickness, profuse salivation, wets the pillow in sleep, like lactic acid. Mammae painful, as if they would ulcerate at every menstrual period, like conium and laccan. Milk in breast instead of menses. Millifolium, painless drainage from nose, lungs, uterus after labor or abortion, from great exertion after miscarriage. Preventive in postpartum hemorrhage. Menses early, profuse, protracted, suppressed with colic pain in abdomen. Leukorrhea of children from atony, like calcaria. Next is murex. Least contact of parts causes violent sexual excitement. Excessive sexual irritation driving to self abuse is oreganum and zinc. Violent excitement in sexual organs and excessive desire for an embrace. Reverse of sepia. Sore pain in uterus, a distinct sensation of a womb, like helonias and lycinum. Bearing down sensation, as if internal organs would be pushed out, must sit down and cross limbs to ameliorate pressure, but no sexual desire in sepia. Menses, irregular, early, profuse, protracted with large clots. Leukorrhea ameliorates mental depression. Happier when leukorrhea is worse. Muriatic acid cannot bear least touch, not even a sheet on genitals. Compare murex. Natrum carp, bearing down as if everything would come out like agaricus, lilium tig, murex, and sepia. Heaviness, aggravation sitting and ameliorated by moving. Discharge of mucus from vagina after an embrace, causing sterility. Natrum mur, pressing, pushing towards genitals every morning. Must sit down to prevent prolapse like lilium tig, murex, and sepia. Nux moscata. At every menstrual nisus, mouth, throat, and tongue become intolerably dry, especially when sleeping, like tarantula. Leukorrhea in places of menses, like cocculus, patient awakened with dry tongue, like lachesis. Physometra, like laccan, bromium, lycopodium, and sanguinaria. Pain, nausea, and vomiting during pregnancy from wearing pessaries. Nux vomica, menses too early, profuse, last too long, or keeping on several days longer, with complaints at onset and remaining after. Menses every 2 weeks, irregular, never at right time, stopping and starting again like sulfur. During menses and after menses, there is aggravation of old symptoms. Labor pains are violent, spasmodic, cause urging to stool or to urinate. Aggravation in back, prefers a warm room. Phosphorus female, during pregnancy, unable to drink water, sight of it causes vomiting, must close her eyes while bathing like lycinum. Phytolacca, mammae full of hard painful neurosities, breast show an early tendency to cake, is full, stony, hard and painful, especially when suppuration is inevitable. When child nurses, pain goes from nipple all over body, goes to back is crotontic, to uterus is pulsatile and silecia. Mammary abscess, fistula, gaping, angry ulcers, pus saneous, ichorous, fetid and unhealthy. Tumified breast, neither heals nor suppurates, is of a purple hue and hard as old cheese. Compare bryonia, laccanum and philandrinum. Nipples sensitive, sore, fissured like graphitis, aggravates intensely by nursing, pain radiates over whole body. Platinum, sexual organs exceedingly sensitive, cannot bear the napkin to touch her. Will go into spasms from an examination, vulva painfully sensitive during coitus, will faint during or cannot endure coitus. Compare murex and oreganum. Nymphomania, aggravation in lying in women. Excessive sexual development, especially in virgins like caliphos. Vaginismus, spasms and constrictions. Menses too early, too profuse, too long lasting, dark, clotted, offensive with bearing down spasms. Pains in uterus with twitching, genitals sensitive. Excessive itching in uterus, pruritus vulvae. Metrorrhagia, flow in black clots and fluid, thick, black, tarry, or in a grumous mass like crocus. Plumbum metallicum female, feels a lack of room for fetus in uterus, inability of uterus to expand, in threatening abortion. Porphyrium, this prolapse of uterus from overlifting or straining, from constipation after parturition with subinvolution. In early months of pregnancy, can lie comfortably only on stomach, like acetic acid. Pain and numbness in right ovary, running down thigh of that side, like lilium tick. Suppressed menses in young girls, like pulsatilla and tuberculinum. Sorinum female, leukorrhea, large clotted lumps of an intolerable odor, violent pains in sacrum, debility during climaxes, during pregnancy, most obstinate vomiting when the best selected remedy fails to relieve, to correct the soric diathesis of the unborn. Pulsatilla nigricans, derangements at puberty, menses suppressed from getting the feet wet, too late, scanty, slimy, painful, irregular, intermittent flow, with evening chilliness, with intense pain and great restlessness and tossing about like macphos, flows more during day, on lying down is creosote. Delayed first menstruation like graphitis, threatened abortion, flow ceases and then returns with increased force. Pains spasmodic, excites suffocation and fainting, must have fresh air. Pyrogenum female, fetus retained, decomposed, dead for days, black, horribly offensive discharge, never well since septic fever following abortion or confinement. To erose vital activity of uterus, lochia is thin, acrid, brown, very fetid, like nitric acid, suppressed, followed by chills, fever, and profuse fetid perspiration. Retania, fissures of nipples in nursing women, like graphitis and sepia. Sabina, tendency to miscarriages, especially at third month, compared Sickle and semicifuga, ailments following abortion or premature labor, hemorrhage from the uterus, flow partly pale red, partly clotted, worse from least motion like Sickle, often relieved by walking, pain extending from sacrum to pubis. Menses, too early, too profuse, too protracted, partly fluid, partly clotted like ferrum in persons who menstruated very early in life. Flow in paroxysms with colic and labor like pains, pains from sacrum to pubis. Discharge of blood between periods with sexual excitement like ambra grigia. Retained placenta from atonia of uterus, intense after pains like cauliflorum and sickle. Menorrhagia during climacteric in women who formerly aborted with early first menses. Inflammation of ovaries or uterus after abortion or premature labor promotes expulsion of moles or foreign bodies from uterus like cantharis. Sanguinaria, climacteric ailments, flushes of heat and leukorrhea, burning of palms and soles, compelled to throw off bedclothes, painful enlargement of breast when lac acid and sulfur fail to relieve. Sanicula, leukorrhea with strong odor of fish brine, oozing from rectum smelling like herring brine is calcarea, fish brine discharge from ear is tellurium. Weakness bearing down as if contents of pelvis would escape, aggravation walking, misstep or jar, amelioration by rest and lying down. Desire to support parts by placing hand against vulva, compare lilium tick and murex. Also there is soreness of uterus like arnica. Sarsaparilla, in this the nipples are retracted, small, withered, unexcitable like silesia. Sickle cornutum, leukorrhea green, brown, offensive, menses irregular, copious, dark fluid with pressing labor like pains in abdomen, continuous discharge of watery blood until next period. Threatened abortion, especially at third month, compare sabina and semicifuga, prolonged bearing down and forcing pain. During labor, pains irregular, too weak, feeble or seizing, everything seems loose and open, but no expulsive action, with fainting. After pains too long, too painful hourglass contraction, suppression of milk in thin, scrawny, exhausted women, the breast do not properly fill. Coming to the next drug, Cipia, there are violent stitches upward in the vagina, lancinating pains from the uterus to the umbilicus, prolapse of uterus and vagina, pressure and bearing down as if everything would protrude from pelvis, must cross limbs tightly or sit close to prevent it. With oppression of breathing, compare agaricus, belladonna, lilium tick, murex, and sanicula. Irregular menses of nearly every form, early, late, scanty, profuse, amenorrhea, or menorrhagia, when associated with above named symptoms. Morning sickness of pregnancy, the sight or thought of food sickens like nux vomica, the smell of cooking food nauseates like arsenic and colchicum. Silesia, discharge of blood from vagina every time the child takes the breast, compare croton tick. Nipple is drawn in like a funnel like sarsaparilla. Sternum, menses too early, too profuse, sadness before, pain in malar bones during, leukorrhea, great debility, weakness seems to proceed from chest. From abdomen, pelvis is phosphorescent sepia. Prolapse of uterus, worse during stool. Prolapse uteri with diarrhea is podophyllum. So weak she drops into a chair instead of sitting down. Staphysagria, painful sensitiveness of sexual organs, vulva so sensitive can scarcely wear a napkin like platinum. Sulfur, menses too early, profuse, protracted, menorrhagia has not been well since her last miscarriage, a single dose at new moon. Syphilinum, leukorrhea profuse, soaking through the napkins and running down to the heels like alumina. Tarantula, at every menstrual nisus, throat, mouth, tongue intolerably dry, especially when sleeping like nux moscata, sexual excitement extreme even to mania, spasms of uterus, pruritus vulvae becomes intolerable. Theridion, for extreme nervous sensitiveness of puberty during pregnancy and climacteric years. Next is Thalaspi bursa pastoris. In this, there is metrorrhagia with violent cramps and uterine colic, enchlorosis after abortion, labor, miscarriage at climacteric with cancer uterus, like phosphorescent ustilago. Menses too early, too profuse, protracted, 8, 10, even 15 days, tardy in starting, first day merely a show, second day colic, vomiting, a hemorrhage with large clots. Each alternate period is more profuse, hemorrhage or delaying menses from uterine inertia, exhausting, scarcely recovers from one period before another begins. Leukorrhea bloody, dark, offensive, some days before and after menses. Tuja, there is distressing, burning pain in left ovarian region when walking or riding, must sit or lie down. Compare crocus and ustilago, worse at each menstrual nisus. Coition prevented by extreme sensitiveness of the vagina like platina. Coition prevented by extreme dryness of vagina is lycopodium, lycinum and natrum. Trillium pendulum, flooding with fainting, menses profuse every 2 weeks, lasting a week or longer, like calcarea phos. After overexertion or too long a ride, menorrhagia, flow is profuse, gushing, bright red at least movement, like sabina. From displaced uterus, at the climacteric, every 2 weeks, dark and clotted. Compare Thalaspi and Ustilago, profuse uterine hemorrhage at climacteric, flow every 2 weeks, pale, faint, dim sight, palpitation, obstruction, and noise in ears. Compare Formica, painful sinking at pit of stomach. Tuberculinum, menses too early, too profuse, too long lasting, tardy in starting, with frightful dysmenorrhea in patients with a tuberculous history. Veratrum female, dysmenorrhea with vomiting and purging or exhausting diarrhea with cold sweat, compare ammonium carb and bovista, is so weak can scarcely stand for 2 days at each menstrual nisus. Compare alumina, carboanimalis and cocculus. Coming to the last drug, zincum metallicum female, always feels better every way as soon as the menses begin to flow. It relieves all her sufferings like lachesis and macphos, but they return again soon after the flow ceases.